Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start this fantastic evening and our debate. The last time I attended an evening event in this university, I was the speaker, and I spent the whole weekend preparing my lecture, and it was about a program we have called Global Citizenship. And I walked in to the lecture theatre, and there were 6 people, and I felt somewhat deflated. But I have to tell you that I'm mega impressed that we've got a full house for this debate, and time requires my Professor Black. A really important subject. For those of you who don't know me, by the way, my name is Michael Ackah, and I'm I think I can still use the prefix new, relatively new President and Provost at UCL. And of course, since I've been here, I have to tell you that equality and diversity are both gender and racially oriented, amongst other things, of course, has featured very prominently in our thinking and in our understanding of what it is we need to do to improve UCL. I was invited the other week to the Racial Equality Steering Group, where I met everybody that's involved in this, and they cajoled me, encouraged me to chair this evening's lecture, and this evening's contributions, I should say. And I have to say it's a very great pleasure to do that. It is something we want to get right at UCL, and I'm under no illusion as to how difficult that will be. And in particular, I think it's very easy to measure things. I think it's very easy to be concerned about them. I think it's awfully difficult to practically change things on the ground. But that's what we ultimately are going to try and do. And events like tonight, where we do a lot of listening to experts in the field, and then also some listening to you, will be terribly important in all of that. So, we're going to start now with the more serious contributions, and I think we're going to be starting with a 10-minute or so movie. So the front bench here, we're going to gently slide out of the way, and, so that you can see the screen, and so that we can see the screen. Then we've got 6 presentations of precisely 10 minutes each. And then we've got open contributions from the floor. So not questions, not comments, but contributions, things that you, the audience, want to say. And my job is to limit you to 1 minute. We're going to be timed precisely. And it's not a question and answer session. You may get the opportunity to do that socially over a glass of wine or whatever later in the evening when we move across to the cloisters. We are literally being beamed around the world, so this is live and out there on the internet as well. So I guess I should just mention to anyone that's watching on the internet a big welcome to UCL, of course one of the world's premier. Okay, we'll move out of the way and we'll start with the movie. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chanel Johnson. I'm the Black, Minority and Ethnic Students Officer here at UCL. The UK has never had a post like this before. This is the first. Because this is the first, I've actually chosen to ensure that we raise the awareness of the issues that are affecting Black students, not just here, but across the country. By doing so, I've actually honoured Black History Month and put on a very visual display of the kind of things that Black people are achieving, not in the past, but now, the here and now. The people that are the history of tomorrow, the people that are achieving today. One of the opportunities that I'm taking is this one right now, because when it was presented that there was going to be a conference called Why Isn't My Professor Black, I took the opportunity to collate the student voices, and this is what you're hearing today. We've spoken to a number of students across the campus in the last 3 weeks, and we've asked them if they would consider a career in academia, and this is what they said.
Yeah, I would. What I want to do is after this year, I want to apply for a PhD and hopefully do a postdoc and then hopefully become a lecturer.
The most recent study that came out said that there are only 10 Black African/Afro-Caribbean women who are in academia, and I want to be number 11, I guess.
I want to spend the next couple of years of my life doing research in this area, and then it would be sort of a dream job for me afterwards to be able to just sit down and research this kind of thing in whatever topic I find interesting or whatever area I like best. And that's why I think I do want a career in academia.
As to whether I would consider a career in academia, I personally think I would, but not at this stage, because I've not found a niche area where I thought I can specialize in. If I were to specialize in anything, I would probably specialize in management courses. But right now I'm studying statistics, and it's not what I truly find any passion about.
I mean, when I started off my degree in September, I had it fixed in my mind that I wanted to do my master's, do my PhD, become an educator, become a lecturer, and kind of be there to boost the really low numbers of kind of Black and BME lecturers for the students. But it has no longer become a case of really completing my degree. Now it's a case of surviving it.
I would consider it. However, the course I'm actually doing, it leads to a professional registration as an audiologist. So, but in the future, I could maybe train other audiologists and pass on the knowledge and skills.
I wouldn't consider a career in academia just because it's not my thing, it's not my world, it's not what my future career is going to be, and I know that. And it's taken, being at uni for 3 years to know that for definite. So yeah, I won't be considering a career in academia.
No, I wouldn't consider a career in academia just because I do like what I'm studying. So I study history. I enjoy it, but it's just not really a career I've really wanted to do since I was young. I've wanted to go into the city and do like a normal job. So I've never really considered academia, but I do enjoy the subjects.
I do physics, I'm in the physics department, and I think I enjoy physics, but I wouldn't really enjoy it as a career. As a hobby, yes, as it's not, it's a passion for uni, but not really as a career for me. There are other people who, may enjoy doing it as a career, but not really.
I don't think I would consider a career in academia, mainly because I don't think there's enough funding in the UK to really push academia forward.
Personally, wouldn't consider it only because I'm not very interested in that area. How I understand knowledge is understand it differently. So I think I'd struggle to pass that on to other people. So that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't enjoy it.
I wouldn't consider a career in academia only because I think by the end of my university time I'd be tired of being around school environments, and I just want to kind of get out and do my own thing.
The short answer is no.
As you've heard, a number of students would not consider a career in academia. The reasons that are given are quite general and could apply to all students. However, the reasons that follow are very specific to students that are from a BME background.
I don't even know if I'm going to graduate sometimes, so if I have to continue that for the rest of my academic career, I'm not sure I can deal with the stress, or will actually be kind of accepted for places of masters or a place to be taught in, to be teaching in an establishment like this. I really don't see myself kind of in this kind of place.
But I know that some people who are of colour or different ethnicities the teachers kind of get them confused and like call them, like, say if there's two black people in a room, they call them by this like other person's name. But it's not happened to me personally, but I've seen it happen in my course, like in my lectures and that. I think it's just because I'm like one of the only black girls, so they have to know my name.
You do see BME lecturers, and you don't really see black lecturers, and you don't see ones more from the UK that come out from inner city London, someone who's, as they say, go grit through the streets and then come through and change themselves and better themselves. If you had someone there, someone to inspire you, like saying, if he's done that and he's come from the same background as me, of course I can do it. But I don't think I've really seen anyone like that. And is there a glass ceiling? It's at night. We don't know it's there.
Yeah, like our head of department is not BME, but I mean there's nothing wrong with that, but the second in command and the third in command, they're all not BME, and it would be nice to just have one person that's...
But some places, I don't know if I want to name specifics, but some places, extracurricular activities, clubs or whatever, sometimes you feel a little bit different or a little bit in the minority. And the worst part about it is probably that people around you, you feel like they don't necessarily notice even that, and so you don't really want to bring it up as a topic of conversation.
It sometimes saddens me, and sometimes I always think about is why we as a BME community, we've almost niched ourselves in certain subjects like engineering, medicine or biomed. Why don't we see more of us in the humanities? It's like, for example, Somali used to be known as the nation's poets. How many Somalis do you see doing English at UCL? I don't think there's any, but it is an interesting question, something hopefully someone looks into. Possibly do we have role models in those communities?
My department is not really that accepting or passionate or interested in any kind of alternative academics, black academics.
However, I do feel that the range of my lecturers and teachers have been very diverse ethnically, and at London School of University it'd be great to have a more diverse range of role models.
I think that there are any teachers who reflect my background. All my teachers are, Caucasian old men, So, no.
We need to become not just leaders in entertaining the community, but leaders in educating the world. Because through education, you're going to change mindset. Through education, we can sometimes get rid of the slight bigotry of these racial stigmas.
We're going to move straight now into the 6 10-minute presentations. And the first one is to be given by Nathan Edward Richards, who's a freelance digital journalist, specialises in digital video production for the web. Nathan's also a doctoral researcher at Goldsmiths University, and his focus is on digital history and online communities. And last year, one of Nathan's films, which I think I've seen, went viral, called Absent from the Academy. And that's a film that attempts to grapple with problems faced by black intellectuals within higher education institutions, and with the impact that their lack of presence has on UK society. So without any further ado, across to Nathan.
There is an overrepresentation of black students and a massive underrepresentation of black professors. These students end up overwhelmingly as recipients and not participants of knowledge creation in this country. In footage that didn't make the final cut of the documentary, Dr. Robert Shilliam from Queen Mary's University speaks about the importance of having black people present around the proverbial table. While these individuals need not necessarily be radicals, Shilliam feels that just their sheer presence in the room will foster another kind of conversation. Quote, if there's a meeting, whether it's a governmental meeting or a university department meeting, and that meeting is about black people, and there are no black people around the table, those present will be saying things and assuming certain things and allowing themselves, despite themselves, to have certain assumptions that they wouldn't have if there was just one black person around the table. The presence of difference in these institutions around a table makes a difference because it means people have to check themselves. The more senior you get, the more tables you sit around, the more power and influence you have. If there are no black academics moving up, then you end up with a lot of precarious black labor in universities with no power and no ability to set an agenda or to even check an agenda that's being set. End quote. However, while certain voices and experiences often embodied in black and brownness can be a vital source of knowledge beneficial to education, it would be unwise to rarefy experience or to think of these academics as existing solely to deal with racialized topics. This would only serve to further entrench the marginalization of these academics and would fail to recognize the diversity of black academics. Both Robbie Shillingham from the Runnymede and Rob Berkeley from the Runnymede and Dr. Shillingham spoke off camera with me about black academics that have specialized in certain topics such as German philosophy or Greek ethics, only to find gainful employment in these fields a struggle. A struggle not because they lack the relevant knowledge to teach or to pursue further research in these areas, but because they were often overlooked for these roles as they did not fit the image of such a scholar. This notion of racial specialization plays itself out every day in higher ed, in obvious but unchallenged ways, such as the notion that Indians excel at computer science, blacks the arts, East Asians in mathematics. These types of stereotypes exist within universities and can impact the way in which heads of department, lecturers, teaching assistants, and senior administrators interact with their new academics and learners, as well as who gets funding and additional support. Professor Laura Pulido, in her book, Black, Brown, Yellow, and Left, explores how such subtle forms of racialization exist relationally, with meanings and associations of one group being contingent upon those of another. This type of differential racialization, Pulido concludes, ultimately benefits the dominant racial group. We should not forget that the makeup of our institutions also affects our everyday experiences. In her essay, Phenomenology of Whiteness, Sarah Ahmed has discussed the ways in which whiteness can operate within institutions. Ahmed identifies reciprocal relationships between bodies and institutional spaces. She writes, "Spaces also take shape by being orientated around some bodies more than others. We can also consider institutions as orientation devices which take the shape of what resides within them. After all, institutions provide collective or public spaces. When we describe institutions as being white, institutional whiteness, we are pointing to how institutional spaces are shaped by the proximity of some bodies and not others. White bodies gather and cohere to form the edges of such space." Ahmed goes further, outlining how these processes inform the recruitment practices of academic institutions, which I'm sure I'm running out of time, so I'll skip that piece. While our experiences of university life can be personally disorientating and problematic, I don't think we should be discouraged. There are increasing numbers of inspirational black academics, and for that matter, fellow students, that are transforming the classroom, institutional cultures, and knowledge itself. This gathering here today is an example of the potential for change. Having now a greater awareness of these issues, I've come to see that my experience and perspective feeds into a very important body of knowledge that is currently lacking from UK universities. It is not explicitly about black and brown bodies, more so it is about the experiences that can often, though not always, exist within these bodies. These experiences and perspectives can offer frameworks of inquiry that can be utilized for other non-racially specific processes within society. C.L.R. James best explains this idea in his essay, Black Studies and the Contemporary Student, in which he outlines the merits of black studies as offering alternative narratives to humanities development. Thank you.
Nathan, thank you. You were literally split second perfect on the timing, so thank you very much for getting us going. We're going to go straight on to our second speaker, and that's Deborah, sat on my left here, Deborah Gabriel. She's a former journalist, but she's been involved in teaching and research in higher education for the past 5 years. She currently lectures in journalism part-time at London Metropolitan University. Deborah recently submitted a PhD thesis on African Caribbean bloggers in the UK and will be defending it shortly at the University of Salford on the 2nd of April. Good luck with that, Deborah. She's also the founder and CEO of Black British Academics. That was launched in April 2013 and has been established as a community interest company from September 2013. So Deborah, over to you.
Right, thank you very much for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Nathan, for that great presentation. How many of you, just out of interest, have heard of Black British Academics? Hands up. Okay, a few, not enough. I'll just briefly explain. Black British Academics, it's a community interest company now, but it was launched last year initially as a network because coming towards the end of my PhD thesis, having spent a few years doing research and teaching, I really felt that there was a need for it. There was so much angst, so much stress, so much trauma and dissatisfaction with the status quo as regards race equality. I felt that it warranted even putting my PhD thesis aside for a few months to get it launched. So literally, race equality in higher education, it is our business. And I think that as much as it's fantastic that we have these kind of initiatives within higher education institutions, it's important to have an independent, Black-led organisation that's intervening into race equality, and that is really what we do. Now, the question, why is my professor Black? It's not just confined to race. Thank you, Nathan, for the fact that you mentioned there are only 15 Black female professors out of 85. I mean, the figure 85 is disgusting, but the figure 15 is even worse. So, you know, at Black British Academics, we take intersectionality seriously. We take marginalisation of Black women seriously, and we're looking into some of the reasons why there's such a low number, not just of Black as in African Caribbean professors, but also other ethnic groups as well. Now, some of the reasons for it is, firstly, it's how universities and in fact most organisations approach equality, and they do so from a single axis framework where you have a body of people looking at gender, and any progress there, I'm afraid to say, usually benefits white women and not minority ethnic women. And we have another body of people looking at race. We have religious discrimination, we have discrimination against people of different sexual orientations, but no one seems to realise that those characteristics combine to form multiple layers of discrimination. So we're looking at that. Some interesting points we've come across is that there are low progression rates from undergraduate degrees to postgraduate studies, especially amongst some female ethnic groups, Bangladeshi, for example, also Caribbean groups as well. That needs to be addressed, and it needs to be explored further as to what are the barriers for those particular groups. There are financial barriers now because there's no funding for taught postgraduate degrees. Some women fall into the groups where there's more financial responsibilities, shall we say. So having accrued massive student debt, if you actually do an undergraduate degree, there's reticence in actually accumulating more debt going on to postgraduate study. That's something that needs to be looked at. We also find that Black students are less likely to be awarded research studentships, and that's one of the main routes into academia through the PhD routes. Now, there's a combination of factors that contribute towards that. Part of it's to do with attainment, because there is a degree attainment gap, which is another issue. And we find that attainment is quite important when it comes to being accepted onto a research degree. And also the other factor is the type of institutions that Black and minority ethnic students go to. And where you have women who might have extra responsibilities in the home in terms of being carers, then they're more likely not to travel a far distance to attend university and to stay close to home. And the majority of graduates that attain research studentships come from the elite universities like this one. And so that needs to be addressed as well. Now, there are other barriers to progression into academia, aside from race, class, and gender. Something called social closure that was written about a few years ago by Carter et al. And we might not want to think about it or admit it, but unfortunately, social closure is about those that actually dominate and hold the highest positions in institutions, which I'm afraid to say are white, middle-class, middle-aged males. There's a pattern, present company accepted, there's a pattern of social closure whereby whether it's unwittingly or not, those that dominate the institutions actually act as gatekeepers. They're more likely to mentor, to patronize, and to develop academics, or even at the student level, people that look like them. And unfortunately, that means that a lot of talented Black and minority ethnic students and graduates get left behind. In terms of the solutions, now Black British academics, we're trying to work at the macro level. We're trying to work at the macro level, and we're trying to work at the level of strategic intervention, because it seems fair that those people who are the decision makers in universities, the vice chancellors, deans, the senior people, those are the ones that actually have to want to make a difference. So we're trying to work at that level, and we like to work in collaboration with other organisations, and we like to work in consultation with Black and minority ethnic students and staff. One of the things we're currently involved in is we're a partner to the all-party parliamentary inquiry into the value of higher education to Black and minority ethnic communities. And there have already been several evidence sessions in Parliament, and there's one more to go, which will be on staffing and recruitment. And Black British academics, we will be there as a witness and also presenting information and helping to produce the final report. We're also working in consultation with the Equality Challenge Unit. They are introducing the Race Equality Charter Mark next year, which is supposed to encourage institutions to take race equality more seriously and to take more measures to address the problems. At the moment, we are actually undertaking a wide-ranging survey into views from Black and minority ethnic staff and students about race equality. There's still a couple of weeks to go. I would urge everyone in this room to take the survey, because this is a chance for you to make your voice count, because what you say in that survey will help to shape ultimately the framework for the Race Equality Charter Mark. And looking at the results we've got to date, I have to say that I'm not really surprised at what people are saying, but it is pretty damning. For example, we asked staff and students to rate race equality at their own institution, and 2/3 rated their institutions either poor or very poor. So that's pretty damning. Also, we wanted to know the experience of racism that black and minority ethnic students and staff have actually had. Again, that's damning. 58% of those who've taken the survey said that they've experienced racism. In terms of the views of academic staff on what are the key issues, interestingly, progression is the top thing. It's the fact that they feel that there are very few opportunities for them to progress. And secondly, lack of diversity in the curriculum. And they feel that the solutions in order of importance are, firstly, strategic intervention. They don't feel that they can sit around and wait for universities to take the initiative. Also, positive action, which is something that we're going to be making recommendations on. Positive action, it's completely within the law. There's lots of things that can be done that aren't being done. For example, it's perfectly legal to promote a black or minority ethnic candidate over another candidate based on equal merit. But what I suspect is, because recruitment is quite a serious issue, it's happening the other way around. So obviously we want more people to take the survey so that we've got more evidence to put forward, but we will certainly be making very strong recommendations to this inquiry and through other strategies that we're having, like the Leaders Forum, which hopefully I'll be able to talk to some of you about afterwards. Thank you.
Deborah, thank you. Some shocking statistics. And we will be adopting that race equality charter mark here. And in fact, the race equality steering group have asked me if I'm going to chair that. So that will match up with the Athena Swan, because I agree with you about this diversion thing. But anyway, we should move on. So next is Dr. Nathaniel Adam Tobias Coleman, immediately on my right. Nathaniel is Britain's first and only research associate in the philosophy of race, and he's a member of staff here at UCL. Dr. Coleman's writing a book at the moment entitled "Why Was Negro Slavery Wrong?" And this research is currently leading his teaching of a UCL seminar on the philosophy of anti-slavery. Dr. Coleman's convening later this month, 28th of March, UCL's first cross-disciplinary forum on race. Nathaniel.
1841. For Solomon Northup, it marked the beginning of 12 years a slave. But for Frederick Douglass, it marked the beginning of 50 years a public speaker. Reflecting on that beginning, Douglass tells us in the second of his 3 autobiographies, My Bondage, My Freedom, that during the first 3 or 4 months, my speeches were almost exclusively made up of narrations of my own personal experience as a slave. Let us have the facts, said the people. So also said friend George Foster, who always wished to pin me down to my simple narrative. Give us the facts, said Collins. We will take care of the philosophy. Let us reflect critically on this notion of taking care of the philosophy by considering, on the one hand, who gets to do philosophy, and on the other, what gets done in philosophy. On the one hand, Douglass doesn't get to do philosophy. Interestingly, just as in the USA we remember Northup's narrative more readily than we remember Douglass's philosophy, here in the UK we remember Olaudah Equiano's interesting narrative more readily than we remember Cobna Ottobah Cugoano's philosophy. Equiano, and Cuguano, and the dozens of other Afro-British men collectively campaigning in central London in the late 18th century were known as the Sons of Africa. They had an explanation for our selective memory. In 1789, in the London Diary, the Sons of Africa wrote that, quote, "The nation at large is awakened to a sense of our sufferings, except the orangutan philosophers," unquote. Without doubt, this reference was to philosophers who had bought into the theory of Edward Long, according to whom, quote, "the orangutan and some races of black men are very nearly allied," unquote. Indeed, quote, "they are, say the most credible writers, a people certainly very stupid and very brutal," unquote. 50 years later, even the abolitionist William Wilberforce still described Long as, quote, "a writer of the highest authority on all West India subjects," unquote, and referred to his, quote, "celebrated history of Jamaica," unquote. More recently, Dr. Philip Atiba Goff has found, quote, "evidence of a bidirectional association between blacks and apes that can operate beneath conscious awareness, yet significantly influence perception and judgments," unquote. Thus, that unspoken and unspeakable suspicion that sits at the tip of your tongue and that might mean that I do not become your professor of philosophy is the question: is Dr. Nathaniel Adam Tobias Coleman an orangutan? The threat of this stereotype, Professor Claude Steele tells us, causes stress to those who, like me, spend an inordinate amount of time, energy, and resources to ensure that no one has any reason to think that we are acting according to type. Yet, when we do dodge the threat of the orangutan, our academic achievements are frustratingly attributed to luck, to fluke, to outside help. How long shall they kill our prophets? Robert Nesta Marley once asked. Stereotype, threat, and attribution bias are killing our prophets. Thus, it is no wonder that I am one of only 5 philosophers racialized as black, employed by a British university, only 2 of whom, the 2 men, are employed by a department of philosophy, namely Dr. James Wilson and I, here at University College London. By contrast, the other 3 philosophers, 3 women, are employed by other departments, namely Dr. Patrice Haynes in the Department of Theology, Philosophy and Religious Studies at Liverpool Hope University, Dr. Catherine Harlow in the Department of Classics at the University of Reading, and Dr. Marlet Getachew Zimeta in the Department of Humanities at the University of Roehampton. We are fewer than 1% of all employed philosophers. None of us is, yet, a professor. On the other hand, Douglas doesn't get done in philosophy. Literature, history, and politics have treated Douglas and other persons enslaved as Negro, and more generally, other persons racialized as black, as artists, biographers, and campaigners. Yet philosophers have not tended to treat such persons as philosophers. Indeed, the first book-length studies of Douglas's political philosophy by Dr. Nicholas Buchler, by Professor Peter C. Myers, and by Professor Bill E. Lawson and Professor Frank Kirkland have only just been published in the last 2 decades. Reflecting upon such neglect, Professor Anita Allen Castellito argues that, quote, if people of color are to do philosophy, philosophers must be willing to do people of color. When we give minorities issues their due, we dignify them as moral agents with morally and intellectually significant lives, unquote. Yet, as Dr. Albert Atkin, a philosopher who had to leave Britain for Australia in order to write and publish his book on the philosophy of race, puts it, quote, mainstream philosophy has managed to make itself something of a notable exception in contributing to debates on race, unquote. Mainstream philosophy has managed to do this by considering itself to be regally above researching blackness. If in the 19th century Gauss dubbed mathematics the queen of the sciences, in the 13th century for Aquinas, other sciences were already the handmaidens of theology. And in the 6th century, Boethius had already patriarchally personified philosophy as a toweringly tall woman with books in her right hand and in her left hand a scepter. Philosophy needs to get off its high horse. For such queenly, or rather queeny, academic arrogance has at least 2 consequences. Inside the academy, philosophy sits in a silo. Outside the academy, it never dares to venture. In a blog posting entitled, What Could Leave Philosophy?, Dr. Brian Weatherson argues that, quote, for a few areas of philosophy, it is easy to imagine them being in other departments, because they already overlap so substantially with work done in other departments, unquote. Thus, instead of seeing overlap as an opportunity to collaborate across disciplinary boundaries, Weatherson sees overlap as an opportunity to police, to enforce, and to constrict the boundary around philosophy. Weatherson's narrow-mindedness is an example of what Dr. Christy Dotson has called philosophy's culture of justification. Not the legitimate demand that one justify the conclusion of one's arguments, no, but the illegitimate demand that one justify that what one is doing counts as philosophy. Such derailing demands mean that philosophy misses out on such groundbreaking cross-disciplinary work as that of, for instance, Dr. Nicholas Kwesi and Dr. Gabriella Beckles-Raymond, both of whom will speak at Critical Philosophy of Race Here and Now in London Senate House on the 5th and 6th of June 2014. This conference will be a milestone in British philosophy, when Anglophone so-called analytic philosophers who tend to think that philosophy can be done from the armchair, unsullied by any engagement with the British public, begin to do philosophy with the armchair at arm's length, rolling up their sleeves, getting their hands dirty, and grappling philosophically with the peculiarities of racial injustice in contemporary Britain. Let us conclude with a reply to Collins. Dear dead white man, we thank you for your very kind offer to take care of the philosophy on our behalf. But frankly, with all due respect, you are not equipped to take care of the philosophy on your own.
Well, Nathaniel, there's nothing I can say that can match the appreciation of that from the length of that round of applause. It was very articulate, and as usual, it kept us on our intellectual toes. So thank you very much indeed. So next is Dr. Lisa Amanda Palmer. And Lisa is a lecturer in working with children, young people and families at Newman University, Birmingham. Dr. Palmer recently convened the Blackness in Britain conference, which was held at Newman University in September 2013, and her PhD, The Politics of Loving Blackness in Britain, focused on love as a black feminist decolonial strategy in the fight against racism.
I'm honoured to follow your presentation, Nathaniel. It was fantastic, thank you very much. I'll just start with mine. Last September at Newman University, the Blackness in Britain conference brought together graduates, early career academics across various disciplines, engaged in the essential work of researching the past, present and future conditions of black populations in Britain. Over 150 delegates attended the conference with over 40 papers presented. And the papers covered themes including the emergence of new black social conservatives, the politics of black women's health in the UK, the impact on public spending cuts on black communities in contemporary Britain, the role of hip-hop in dancehall in regulating and influencing young black British women's sense of self. So we had a very broad collection of papers. The conference emerged from a conversation between myself and my colleague, Kayende Andrews. And we were discussing our own experiences of feeling marginalised within the academy whilst we were researching our own PhDs at the University of Birmingham. And we felt, we recognised that this experience of marginality would actually more likely be replicated in other areas, other students, other researchers would be actually still experiencing this feeling of being marginal, not actually being part of the process of British higher education. So the conference explicitly sought to address this issue of marginality by creating a safe space for scholars to come together and research their work in relation to blackness in Britain in higher education. We feel like delegates responded to the conceptual framework of the conference as an openly defined space for research and discussion centred on blackness that moved beyond deeply ingrained models of blackness as deficit and dysfunction. Many delegates also spoke about how powerful it was to be able to talk and discuss their work without needing to justify or explain their focus on blackness itself. So building on the momentum of this event, we've decided to establish a set of key initiatives, including the establishment of an Association of Black Studies and the Black Studies in Britain seminar series, which we're hoping to run over the next few years. The explicit aim of both these initiatives is to embed Black Studies firmly within the British higher education establishment. The working group has now broadened to include academics beyond Newman, and we've got a working body of people who are involved in creating funding applications both to the ESRC and the British Academy. But whether our funding bids are successful or not, we collectively intend to move ahead with the seminar series. And within that, we have like 4 key objectives that we're trying to achieve. The first objective is to develop networks for research in Black studies in the UK. So, as said before, we recognise that Black scholarship and scholars are routinely marginalised. Hence the need to establish an association of Black British studies. The seminar series, we hope, will further act as a catalyst to intervene in this marginality by opening up spaces within the partner institutions where Black study scholarship can be disseminated and where research networks can be developed and established. Our second objective is to connect British networks into international Black studies networks. So internationally, we recognise that Black British scholarship has played an important role in shaping Black diasporic discourse and scholarly activity, with key conceptual frameworks such as Professor Stuart Hall's New Ethnicities and Professor Paul Gilroy's The Black Atlantic, emerging from Black British academics working in Britain. The Black Studies in Britain seminar series will connect with Black studies networks in Europe and the US to begin to unpack the role of Black British scholarship and its impact on Black intellectual thought globally. Our third objective is working with community and third sector organisations. For Black studies to grow and to develop strategically, we need to establish partnerships with third sector community activism and activity. And this is, we see as being essential to the kind of co-production of knowledge. These alliances can enable expertise and knowledge to be shared between academics and community organisations and create possibilities for community transformation, as well as supporting opportunities for new scholarship to emerge. The fourth objective is to encourage postgraduate development in Black studies. So a major objective of this programme is to create and connect with new and existing postgraduate networks to ensure that the future growth and development of the next generation of scholars, to ensure the future generation of the next generation of scholars researching Black studies in Britain. We believe that to get this right, a community of scholars well supported with consistent funding is needed where research will lead their teaching practice in the discipline of Black studies. So it's important that we think about this in terms of actually being research-led, that we have researchers that are at the forefront of researching Black studies and are at the forefront of teaching the discipline. Okay, so I've kind of outlined what I see as future possibilities, but I also want to talk about the threats to Black studies, the actual challenges that Black studies faces. So there are many complex challenges and threats to the development of Black studies. However, I want to focus on one factor, and that is for many Black students and staff in higher education, our campuses often resemble colonies. As Denise Noble has suggested in the documentary film Absent from the Academy, made by my colleague at the end, one of the key threats to Blackness in the academy is the condition of coloniality. Walter Mignola describes coloniality as the darker side of modernity. Coloniality, he states, names the underlying logic of the foundation and unfolding of Western civilization, from the Renaissance to today, of which historical colonialisms have been constitutive, although a downplayed dimension. In relation to Black studies, British higher education needs to face up to this condition of coloniality, where the continuing and pervasive logic of intellectual power and authority is still so starkly white. The concrete nature of whiteness in the academy continues to militate against the notion that Blackness is a valuable site for the production of knowledge. Far from being a subtle or nuanced form of racism, coloniality reveals structural and institutional racism in its crudest terms. It can be argued that racism, racist thoughts, racist acts, and institutionalized racism are downplayed in our day-to-day collegial interactions and bureaucratic processes. However, They are unquestionably confirmed and buttressed by a resistance to take black studies seriously, and with that, the failure to tackle related issues of racism that have remained so deeply ingrained in higher education. Needless to say, the resistance of institutions to critically examine and deconstruct discriminatory practices has been a huge problem for some time. But why does coloniality still exist after years of producing research and reports that highlight the persistence of racialized discrimination in British HE? Unfortunately, the belief in black intellectual inferiority remains profoundly persistent and pervasive. To me, this suggests there's something fundamentally terrifying about the way blackness and black bodies are too often conceived in relation to intellectual space. It is as if the black presence is representative of an interloper, an intruder, that does not really belong in the tradition of producing academic knowledge in Britain of any worth. And why isn't the sector much more alarmed about this? Tuition fees, zero-hour temporary contracts, austerity, and the marketisation of university education all have a role to play in silencing issues of race. But despite these real concerns, the brokering of power in British universities still remains blindingly white. This situation is not new. In fact, it's a very old problem. Universities in Britain need to face up to the condition of coloniality by starting to dismantle its discriminatory practices. A few weeks ago, a black female student on the program that I teach on at Newman expressed to me that she felt as if she didn't belong. While some students feel they do belong, their experiences do not take account for the fear, the anxiety and heaviness, what Professor David Theo Goldberg has called the weight of racism. It doesn't take account of the way that black students carry this weight of racism and how they often feel alienated and racialized. And so when we consider black subjects born in Britain, our arrival in the British Academy still appears quite peculiar. Embedding black studies can intervene in this process of dismantling coloniality, but we still have some way to go before black studies is explicitly recognised and valued as a site of knowledge within the British Academy. Thank you.
Lisa, thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on now to Dr. William Ackah, who is lecturer in community and voluntary sector studies at Birkbeck College, where he lectures and conducts research on African diaspora politics and religion. He's convener of the Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race, and his latest project, a co-edited volume on churches, blackness and contested multiculturalism, will be published by Palgrave Macmillan in June of this year. Dr. Ackah is author of The Experience of My Experience, Reflections on Working in Deranged White British Academic Space. Really no way to refer to Birkbeck, I hasten to add. I completely lost my place now. And that's in Professor Mark Christian's anthology, Integrated but Unequal Black Faculty in Predominantly White Space. William, over to you.
Thank you. So before I talk, let me just take 10 seconds, maybe 20 of the time, just to acknowledge that there are some black professors in the room this evening. And given what we've spoken about, the nature of institutionalized racism in the profession, just want to acknowledge that the wonderful job that you must have done to get to where you've gotten to, given how the system has operated. So just want to acknowledge the black professors that are in the room today. So, why isn't my professor black? So there's a very interesting question on one level, but also a very depressing one on another. I think there are a number of reasons that we could discuss why professors are invariably white and, for the most part, male. We could discuss the ideals of academic liberal autonomy. That liberal autonomy that is meant to say that there are high standards in teaching, high standards in research, high standards in ethics, and that when you have such high standards, well, there can be no place for institutional racism in places such as this. You know, these problems may exist in the police force, they may exist in other realms of public life, but academia is somehow different. Academia somehow is meant to rise above these kind of grubby processes. Yet, I suppose the processes by which individuals become academics is very individualized. I think it has been discussed by colleagues. These processes rarely come under scrutiny. And if one, such as myself, aspiring black academic, even has the temerity to ask, why is my professor invariably white? I think we may get told the same old story. Have you looked at the literature? Have you reviewed the past research? Crunched the numbers? Critically analysed the situation and the circumstances? And then the answer then will be obvious. The brightest and the best. Teach and research the brightest and the best. And for you to say otherwise suggests that you have an axe to grind. Even when that axe that we're grinding seems to tell us that the facts are very much different. So perhaps because of this, I won't focus on why my professor is white, but I'll go back to the original question, why my professor isn't black. Aimé Césaire, one of the key proponents of the negritude movement that was prominent in Paris in the 1930s, in his famous poem, Return to My Native Land, he exclaims, "Hooray for those who never invented anything. Hooray for those who never explored anything. Hooray for those who never conquered anything." But what Césaire says in irony, I think that elements of European society, in its colonial quest, in its forced enslavement of African peoples, think they came to believe that indeed African people were not capable of invention, not capable of creativity, not capable of intellectual endeavor. And I quote Hegel to illustrate this. He said, "The Negro, as already observed, exhibits the natural man in his completely wild and untamed state. We must lay aside all thought of reverence and morality, all that we could call feeling, if we would rightly comprehend him. There is nothing harmonious with humanity to be found in this type of character." Now, although one would be hard-pressed to find any scholars making such remarks today, it is this legacy and the idea that black life is somehow anti-intellectual that still echoes down the corridors of time. And I think this, in part, explains why there are no degree courses in UK universities that explore black life and experience in all its complexity in the UK. By comparison, we do have courses on Jewish life and experience, and quite rightly. But courses on the black British experience are notable for their absence in mainstream academia. Yet, conversely, minorities, immigrants, black people are continually discussed, copied, researched in Parliament, in media, in academia. But for the most part, as objects of analysis, rather than subjects, rather than as autonomous agents. You know, a very crude illustration of this was in August 2011, when the historian David Starkey appeared on Newsnight. Starkey told the BBC, "The whites have become black. A particular sort of violent, destructive, nihilistic gangster culture has become the fashion. And black and white, boy and girl, operate in this language together. This language which is wholly false, which is this Jamaican patois, that's been intruded in England." Now forgive me, but I don't think that I would ever be invited on Newsnight to talk about the importance of Elizabethan monarchy to contemporary Britain. No, I'm not an expert. But the same rules don't seem to apply to black experience. Anyone can be an expert on black culture, even a so-called expert on the Elizabethan monarchy. And note, even when he had his opportunity, he didn't talk about the experience of black people in Elizabethan England. So, black people in Britain, black people in the academy are objects, not subjects with agency. We are like the character that Ralph Ellison describes in his classic novel, The Invisible Man. Says, "I'm an invisible man. No, I'm not a spook like those who haunted Edgar Allan Poe, nor am I one of your Hollywood movie ectoplasms. I'm a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fibre and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I'm invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. When they approach me, they see only my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me." So how is it then? How can we move from a position from being invisible and unseen to where we are seen and recognised as a key feature of UK academic life? The Provost, who is with us this evening in his message to UCL, The Long View on Equality and Diversity, he notes the admission of black studies from the academic terrain of Britain. And that's one thing we hope that will be addressed here at UCL and also elsewhere in the UK. I think that is one important step on the journey towards more black professors in the UK. But also, as equally as important, is the recognition of the importance of the black experience to British life and British culture. You know, Black British Studies paves the way for a much more richer and diverse telling of British historical and contemporary life. And that's not just a benefit to black people, that is a benefit to all people. I think it's worth noting that in the context of the US, the birth of black studies there came about as a result of student protest and student demonstration as part of the civil rights movement. But that the introduction of black studies in the US not only led to more black academics being hired there, but also to more black administrators and more black leaders, not just in the area of black studies, but other disciplines as well. And in a further irony, black colleagues who were unable to find jobs here have moved to the US and forged successful careers over there. So, even though the US is by no means perfect, it has opened up spaces for black academics to become professors in ways that has not happened here. So, in conclusion, why isn't my professor black? I think it's because the white liberal establishment does not want to acknowledge that it has a serious problem in regards to its structures and processes. Secondly, wider British society has grown comfortable with black people in certain spheres of public life, sport, music, etc. But based on its past legacies, the wider society still has difficulty envisaging black people in significant numbers, heading institutions and providing direction and leadership in research and teaching. Even though it should go without saying, we are more than capable. Thank you.
William, thank you very much. I have to say at the beginning of the evening I didn't really expect David Starkey to feature very much, but very well done. And for the students in the room, we might be able to move through to Black Studies without the protest bit in the middle at UCL. We're going to move on to our final speaker, and it's a very great pleasure to welcome Dr. Shirley Tate, who's Associate Professor in Race and Culture in the School of Sociology and Social Policy at the University of Leeds, a completely brilliant UK university in my experience. And Dr. Tate works on race intersections, and her research interests are race, performativity, affect, racism in organisations, racialised bodies, beauty, and food. And she is the author of Supping It, Racial Affective Economies and the Epistemology of Ignorance. And again, that's in Professor Mark Christian's anthology, Integrated but Unequal Black Faculty in Predominantly White Space. And Shirley, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. The question, why isn't my professor black, I suppose, is one that ceased to be interesting because we know that there are so few black professors. But I think perhaps what we need to say, instead of asking that particular question, is to think about under what conditions could my professor be black? That is, what would need to change for that to be thinkable and to become a real possibility? One of the things that would need to change fundamentally is the racial contract that exists within UK universities, which produces a particular mindset, which, as my colleagues have said, reproduce black academics as bodies out of place. Also, which ensure that we work within contexts in which we are surrounded by negative affects like disgust and contemptuous tolerance. That's the sort of thing that I want to talk about in this very brief 10 minutes that I've got. It's a much larger topic, of course. So first of all, as a body out of place, in common with many black academics, I'm the only one in my department. I sit in meetings as the only one. I teach as the only one. I attend open days as the only one. Being the only one is not about being unique or being rare or being treasured. Rather, like the few other black academics that there are, I'm seen as either the exception or the representative of the race. As the exception and representative in academic institutions, black women and men are bodies out of place, subject to what George Yancey calls the distortional seeing of whiteness through which they're objectified and kept apart, some of which William also spoke about earlier. Black academics invariably find ourselves struggling against exclusion once we are within academia. We struggle because inclusion acknowledges that race marks some as lacking in proficiency, intelligence, and talent, so that those left unmarked are seen as the intelligent, proficient, and having the temperament for success. Inclusion is problematic because the white body continues to be the unmarked norm. Doubt in terms of capability means that there's a corporeal and psychic economy set in train in which black academics are not automatically assumed to have the right competence for academic life, irrespective of their standing in the wider disciplinary community or indeed the university itself. Negative affects surround black academics, attempt to permeate our psyches and stick, as Sarah Ahmed would say, to our very skins. Such is the nature of the racial affective economies within university settings. So I want to go on to talk about racial affective economies and negative affects. To look at the racial affective economies in organizations where black women and men enter as colleagues, we must turn to the nature of the word colleague itself. Its etymology shows that it is from the Latin collega, which is kind of made up of com, which is with, and then legare, to choose. So one that is chosen at the same time as another. This seems to imply equality of standing. Such equality is undermined, however, because when black academics are hired, epidermalization ensures that they're less than a colleague, as well as being colleague-less. White colleagues continue to have problems being collegial. They have bad feelings if one steps outside of the natural space of blackness into what is still seen as the white sphere of influence in academic life. These statements can be made because of daily black experiences in academic institutions in which racial inequality is the norm and where being a colleague or experiencing collegiality are an impossibility. A daily struggle for black academics in higher education institutions is to resist their location in the space of abjection because of their very skin. Skin abjection is transported through the negative affects of disgust and contemptuous tolerance. However, if we think about tolerance and we think it's something positive, I want us to think again, because I've prefaced it with contemptuous tolerance, because tolerance always points to that which cannot be tolerated, that which is the focus of disgust or contempt. So we work in institutions which are supposed to be tolerant, and we live in a society which is multicultural and tolerant, but even tolerance itself is intolerable. Therefore, on entry to institutions, those who cannot be tolerated, us, must be controlled through words, actions, policies, bureaucracies, and negative affects. Negative affects such as contemptuous tolerance and disgust generate an atmosphere which can be sensed, but often can never be named because it is overlain by a condescending friendliness that can very easily be mistaken for conditional collegiality and inclusion. If we take disgust, for example, we can say, following Sian Nagai, that disgust generates an atmosphere because it is never ambivalent about its object. There's a sense in which it seeks to include or draw others into its exclusion of the object, enabling a strange kind of sociability. This strange white sociability is what academics feel when they walk into a room which is already occupied in the present and past as white, what underlies selective invitations for drinks, a meal, or the cinema, and also what determines if your face fits. These are not relevant examples of collegial intimacy, as they can often determine who gets jobs, passes their probation, and indeed gets promoted. So friendships and networks within institutions are key to career progression. There is a lack of an institutional memory of black women and men as intimates or even equals, which guarantees that they cannot be addressed as friend. Friend is not our natural address because of what Jacques Derrida terms the logic of the same, where the friend is our own ideal image. We envisage the friend as such, and this is how she envisages us, with a friendly look. Therefore, friend is performatively brought into being through an envisaging look because we feel we have something in common with someone else. If, as black academics, we're bodies out of place, experiencing continuously negative affects like disgust and contemptuous tolerance, we are already not the who of friendship. We are continually located in the time and space of estrangement through the operation of racial affective economies and their object-producing glances. Glances are very often reflective of the university's inequality regime, so they're not neutral. And they're also reflective of the particular relationality of power governed by membership in networks. So I want to go on to say a little bit about networks now and power. Networks represent the knowledge practice on which organizations are based, where the capillaries of white power mirror societal inequality regimes. Relationships based on the logic of the same are crucial for who has access to jobs in the first place and also who gets promoted. Employment and promotion do not always necessarily depend on the quality of our work or academic standing, but more often than not are also about who knows you and who you know. Since black academics cannot be what George Yancey calls whitely in the world, This cuts down both who we know and who knows us. If to know is to look upon us with love or favor, to look upon us as friend. What is very interesting for thinking about networks and power is what Black academics are often asked in moments of failure in being promoted. I was asked, for example, who did I speak to before making the application, and was I being mentored by anyone? The answer for all of us and for myself in that particular instance was no one. I spoke to no one, and I was being mentored by no one. So it's no one and no. Exclusion from networks means that we don't get mentored or have access to the organizational knowledge practice which are so essential for success. And part of this not being mentored and speaking to no one is about trust. If we don't feel we can trust anyone, if we feel that we are in a position of kind of conditional inclusion, if we feel that we're never envisaged as friends, what we have is a situation in which Black academics have to trust with limits, because they have to recognize that the silent working of networks means that we are constantly outsiders. And we remain outsiders in terms of promotion much longer than others. Even when we seem to possess more of everything, more books, more articles, we teach more, we have more PhD supervisions, we have more administrative experience, we have more research money, though that last one is a bit hard. We exist within a context in which the silent workings of networks are where the power lies in universities, which has negative organizational impacts because, of course, networks often do not lead to the refreshing of talent. They also do not lead to necessary changes in work practices, nor to transformations of organizations' views of race unbelonging.
Shirley, thank you very much indeed. So 6 very thought-provoking and amazing contributions from our panellists, and it's now your turn as the audience. And the way in which we want to work this is we're going to take contributions from you, and we're going to take them 3 at a time, and then I can pause and spot where extra contributions are coming from. And I think probably the simplest way of doing this is if we do 3 questions over there and then 3 questions in the middle and then 3 questions over there, or something like that. But I could see your disappointment, so we'll start your side then. If you'd like to start, and you've got 1 minute to make a contribution, and we're going to get as many of these in as we possibly can in the time we have available. I think we're going to run slightly late because we started late. We're going to run till about 8:10.
So I'm going to speak really quickly. First of all, I'd like to say fantastic. Any students, black or white, would be really lucky to have such an invigorating, inspirational board. I really want to speak to what Dr. Shirley Tate said, because I feel really emotional about what you've said. I do actually think it is about connections. I was lucky to be a student here at UCL, and that has opened many, many doors for me. Unfortunately, I feel very sad because the higher and higher you get, and I was the only black woman in charge of a clinical program in the whole of the HCPC, and the higher you get, the less people there are. I've had a few people, one of them is actually here, who's actually been very useful. What I basically want to say is it's very, very complex, and the complexity begins at the case when you feel that if you say anything, you don't actually feel, you feel that you're, it's racializing things. For example, I had a doctoral student that I suggested a male black tutor should be her internal examiner. All of a sudden, the goalposts were changed, and a black professor who knew nothing about it. And I was told I couldn't say anything, I couldn't make a big deal about it. So I think I want to ask you as a panel, do you feel sometimes that even if you feel that things are wrong, the way that they've been kind of presented, it's very, very difficult for you to actually go against the system?
So these are Nathaniel's rules, not mine, right? But we weren't going to take questions. We were going to take contributions. So it was both, definitely it was both. But maybe we can answer your question over a glass of wine later is the idea. And the sole purpose of that is to get as many contributions as we can. So let's keep going. Was there another one up there? One at the back, perhaps? No? One just there.
Thank you.
I think it was wonderful contributions. It really should have been a day-long conference, number one. Two, I think...
You'll have to come to Nathaniel's conference in a few weeks' time.
Okay, great. I think in the light of the Macpherson report, when it came out in 1993 over Stephen Lawrence, I had hoped that one of the recommendations, one of the statements that Macpherson made in terms of institutionalized racism of the police, I thought, great, this will be an opportunity for the institutionalized racism of academia to be exposed, and it hasn't 20 years on. And I think the spotlight, not just of institutionalized racism, structural racism of academia needs to be exposed, but all the institutions within British society. So therefore we need to ask ourselves, how many black judges do we have? How many black magistrates, heads of prisons? How many black provosts do we have? How many black chancellors do we have? In all the spheres of society, we need to examine the heights to which black people, people of African descent, can reach. And then lastly, I think we need to have quotas or yardsticks in terms of 3 years, 5 years, that we can measure in terms of statistics and qualitatively, how are those black people doing as professors and academics? I speak of as one of them in the academic wilderness. How are we faring in those institutions?
Brilliant comment. Right at the back, and then we're going to move to the middle section.
Good evening. I am actually quite privileged to be here this. Everyone turns around because they hear Caribbean voice. To be here this evening, and actually I'm quite amazed at the contributions. I think a lot of the discussion often is framed as a victim of systems, institutions, and structures. But what I've recognized here, and which is something that I want to commend and highlight, is that there is a lot of agency in this room. There is a lot of agency here, and there's a lot of things that are happening, of which I would definitely want to be a part, that shows that the black community in Britain, as well as professors in different spheres and fields, have a lot of agency in spite of the difficulties that you face. And that is something that should be actually acknowledged. Thanks.
Okay, let's come to the middle section. So 3 one-minute contributions. Yes, sir, in the yellow jersey.
My name is Gus John. A few years ago, I had the task of evaluating how each HE institution in this country was complying with the Race Relations Amendment Act 2000. And in summary, having done that in England, Scotland, and Wales, what I would say is this: because most of those places are run by white males, because of the educational background from which many of those people come, they have neither the cultural competence, the managerial competence to promote, manage, extend the equality, diversity, inclusion agenda within their institutions. What is worse is that they do not accept that the black staff they have, few as they are, and the black students in those institutions have got the capacity to interpret both the academy and the society to itself, so that they might learn certain things from it and make that a source for transformation.
Two down the front here. Yes, please.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, I'm Victoria Schwumley. I know Nathaniel very well. Thank you very much. The panel was really, really good. I'm going to speak quite fast because we've got less than 1 minute. It was interesting, actually, because a chapter in my book, which was done in '95, one of the chapters said, "Surely we're imagining it." And I think that kind of sums up kind of where we're at with what some of the things you were saying. But what I want to say very quickly is, can we have a conversation, and we meaning, I think, yourself, Nathaniel, and anybody else at UCL, that includes black academics from the IOE. I'm from the IOE. So we can continue this conversation as part of the dialogue, because we also feel that as we become part of you, we need to feel that we're not lost and we become part of the bigger picture.
And in fact, after the article I wrote, I've also been approached by the London School of Economics about joining forces. So I think across several institutions in London, we've got an opportunity that we should take. So anyway, thank you very much for your contribution.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to say that this is fantastic, and I think it's a real watershed for UCL. That said, I work here at UCL. I've worked here for about 15 years. I'm not an academic, but I'm an administrator, a senior manager in IT. And one of the challenges I think that black people face working in organizations is that racism has evolved. Racism is smart and it's clever, and it can reshape itself to be undetected. And one of the ways in which it has done that is by excluding you, going above you, going below you, finding a way to keep your voice out of the room. And you want to speak, you want to say something, you want to expose it, but you fear for yourself, because it isn't obvious. You're not called a nignog. It's not that blatant. It's subtle, but it feels very, very real. And when you look at all the factors that are around it, you just look at it and you think, this must be because I is black. And I think one of the key questions I think a lot of people will have on their mind is, what now? What different? We have to do different to be different. And I think also that the messages you've sent out, Provost, about how important equality is at UCL is heartening, and I think it kind of will give an encouragement to those who do feel it's time to speak out, but in a way that's measured and is evidence-based, that we're not in an organization where the mere speaking out means you're even further excluded. So that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, there's one hand at the back there, and then we'll move across. Yeah, just do one more, and then I'm going to come back round, don't worry. So you'll, young lady at the back, you'll get a chance. Yes,
Hi.
please, fine.
My name is Juliet Sagai. I have a very quick point, not from an academic perspective, because after university I ran away from academia. And I just want to say why. So my situation is that I went from 4 A's at A-level, almost getting 100% in my English literature exam, to getting a 2-2 at university. And what happened is I was the only black person in my faculty, but when I went to university, I was never concerned about race. But what happened is that I found out I was a nigger at university, and I didn't know this. And when I say that, what I mean is I found out leaving London what white people think about black people, and that was never my experience before. And I was traumatized. It did impact me negatively, and I'm just interested in knowing what we can do from a mentoring perspective to help students that were in my position. Because when I came back to London, I got my groove back. My life is amazing now, but I think that someone else might be affected more in a long-term way, and that's my point.
So one right at the back. Okay, well that'll do, that's fine. You've got the microphone, off you go.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much to all the panelists, that was amazing. I'm going to make a quick point. I think we shouldn't be shy about asking why isn't our provost black, or a woman, or a black woman, or a black woman from a working class background, because this is a question about how power is distributed and stratified in our society. And academia not only mirrors these stratifications, these inequalities in society, but actually actively reproduces them. And whenever we try and address the questions of race and gender-based discrimination and underrepresentation in academia, we must take this into account. Academia is not only one environment, but actually is the primary environment that reproduces inequality.
Okay, there's a question at the back. We'll come back to you shortly, but we'll do the one at the back first. Yeah, the chap with the beard.
Hi, I just wanted to give an example of, as a student in UCL, of a man who's a racist, who was celebrated in the university. His name is Francis Galton. There's a collection after his name, there's a lab after his name, there's even a lecture theater after his name. And this isn't really a question that I want answered right now, but why is it that what is the basis for these men to be celebrated when black academics, black alumni are not given that basis? There is no basis for black academics or alumni to be celebrated in this campus, while racists such as Francis Galton are overly celebrated without even mentioning the racism in their writing. And as a student, we were never taught that these people are racist. We're only taught they're polymath, they're the most influential men in the history of Britain, but we have to do our own research to find out that these men hate us. So, yeah.
Let's come back down to the middle, and then we'll go up into the top left-hand corner after that. And you're not the first person to make that point to me, by the way. My only defence is I inherited him.
Hello. I just want to actually bring back to the video that I saw earlier, and as someone who's from a black working class background, and I really think institutions need to work a bit harder in getting information on how to get into academia. Because before I came, I'm actually a student from Birkbeck, I had no idea that I would have to do a master's. I didn't even know what a master's was, how to do it. How do I apply to a PhD? How do I go through that process to be able to sit on the panel like you up there? And my experience is that in the institutions rely on parents to tell their children this information, and that ties in with class and all those sort of things. And I really think the institutions need to work a lot harder in getting that information out to working class students on how to get into your position.
So we'll keep going on this section, then we'll work back across the room. And I think we can do 3 more questions here, 3 more here, and 3 more here if we go fast. So right at the back with the mauve sweater, would be great.
Sorry.
Mauve and white, anyway.
Hi everyone, my name's Monique.
And I'm Antoinette.
And we're both PhD students at Warwick and Queen Mary. But we're also UK ambassadors for the Black Doctoral Network. It's relatively new, and what it is people that are considering doing PhDs, people that are doing PhDs, people that have got PhDs. It's an international network trying to do collaboration and just a forum for collaboration, really. So if you are interested at the end, we'll be around. And also, obviously, to congratulate the panel. It's a wonderful event. And yeah, just keep moving forward.
Okay, are there further questions in this section? Yes, please, the guy with the white sweater and wearing specs there.
Hi, good evening. I just want to say thank you for the panel. It was a really good, interesting event for me. My name is also Nathaniel. Hi, Nathaniel. I just wanted to point out that as growing up as a black Caribbean male, coming from a black Caribbean culture, I think it's something that it's really good for you guys to be up there, but it's something that we need to push for as a culture, because what you realize, being a black Caribbean male or female, you always push, the general archetypes about you could be a lawyer, a singer, a footballer, a rapper, but never academic. I want to be an academic. I'm looking forward to it. This event for me has been a lot. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to point out that I'm very grateful for it, and Culturally Rise is something that we need to push our children towards. I'm very young, but we need to push our children towards. And I just wanted to also add into there, because I didn't think it came up, that I feel that being black is something that you wear as a class. If you strip me down, if you strip anyone down, I'm a black male first, before a black academic, a black student, a black sports player. It's always a black first, whereas just a man. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
And one more just down here. Yeah, this young lady here. Thank you. No, not that one. The other one. Never mind. You can all have a go. It's fine.
Yeah.
I've lost complete control.
Not
Perfect.
giving up the mic. Evening, everybody, and just want to thank you. Like everybody else is saying, I won't waste my minute. Just first thing I want to say, just as information, that there's an MA. I said it was a BA to somebody while waiting in reception, but there's a Black British writing course at Goldsmiths that's starting, and they're next year, 2015, asking people to sign up, or it won't happen. But it's the first ever. And just want to say I'm a student here, and I look around, I can see Laura, I can see Dante, I can see Gemma, and just the support network I've needed. I'm studying archives part-time here. What you've said this evening has given me the strength to continue with my dissertation, which is exploring, I've been looking for where are the other black archivists. So it's a question that hasn't left me since I started my course. So it's really supported me to just go forward with the research for that. I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, it got missed. Firstly, I'd like to applaud this type of event, like what we're experiencing right now, that have moved things forward quite a lot from obviously like 20, 30 years ago. And actually, just to put things in context, I'm 30 years old. I'm from a remote place or a remote part of the country of Zimbabwe, and only came here in my adult life to start going into education, higher education. I'm now doing my PhD here after having done my master's in this university as well. I've studied in City University, South Bank, and the London School of Hygiene as well. And all through this, coming up to now, I've been quite oblivious of my race. Most likely, or mostly, and thankfully, thanking events such as this and progress that's been made, such as what we have here right now. One of the bigger barriers, and just to bring in a different view of why my professor isn't black, and maybe a black woman, the bigger barrier that I see for me and women like me is actually lack of support from my society. So people like us here are more minorities in just very quickly. Young girls or young black girls don't get as much encouragement from what I see within churches and black communities to move forward and want to achieve something like this. So in a sense, I'm seen more as a failure for being 30 and unmarried, as opposed to being a success for being a PhD student in a London university, being from such a remote spot, black and a woman. So just to think of it as us, that we need to push forward our young girls to want to do this as well.
Okay, so we're going to come back to the central section. If you go up towards the back, the young lady on the left-hand end of this row, you've got it. That's it, perfect. And then it can go to the right after that.
Hi, my name's Camilla. I'm actually 20. I'm doing my undergraduate in English literature. I wanted to say, well, firstly, looking around now, I guess I know how it feels to be the minority. So I have a lot of respect for you all. And I want to say that I really would love to see more black writers on my course. I'd love to see a black lecturer. I'd love to see it. I think it would actually, I think the problem is we can't move forward when we're rehearsing and recycling and further treading into the sullied carpet of academia, this idea of a white discourse, a white academic discourse, which is archaic and old-fashioned, and it needs to move forwards. But in order to do that, I think there needs to be an education from a student's point of view. I think until it comes from learning about black history, black literature from, as Nathaniel and others said, from black perspectives is key in kind of developing. So.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi, I am the only black person in the English Literature department at UCL doing an undergrad at the moment. Hello. Thank you, no. So it's quite funny coming after you. I grew up in London, and the reason why I applied to UCL over Durham or Bristol or any of the other Russell Group universities, along with the reputation of the department, is because I thought it's London. And I'm from South East London. I turned up, and I am, and I have been, and if I graduate, might be the only black face that they have seen. In terms of authors, in terms of writers on my course, there are a few lecturers who have been amazing, who have gone out of their way to do courses, but they're optional courses on the Harlem Renaissance, on immigration and the novel. In terms of black perspectives in literature that are compulsory in my department, there are two. We have Joseph Conrad and Heart of Darkness, and we have J.M. Kidzea, White South African and Disgrace. They are the only black people who appear in our course. We had Toni Morrison, and she was taken off the year before I arrived. And so I'd just like to, I guess, for one thing, thank you so much, everyone on this panel. I am absolutely blown away that my university is doing something like this after the many jokes and many things that I've said with my friends. Also, finding out that there is a black professor at UCL. I've always tried to find one. We have no black lecturers. We have no black professors in my department. I've had one lecture in 3 years. I'm graduating in 2 months. One lecture from someone who wasn't white. He did post-colonialism in my first year. They got someone in, a visiting lecturer. And I guess I just like the one thing that has got me through, the girl in the video at the beginning who was saying she had to survive her degree, she's from my department, and I am really lucky that a friend of mine introduced me to her, and we have created a sort of informal network where we talk to each other and we know, and I think that's something that I'd like to encourage everyone else to kind of do. Seek them out, especially in the humanities. There are so few of us. Just talking to her, knowing the girl who was above me, I know the one who was in the year above, I know the 3 who are doing a PhD or whatever, and I just think that's something we need to really try and encourage, a sort of network, because it seems that the institutions aren't giving us that platform ourselves.
Okay. Just before we move on to the next set of contributions, I'm sorry to announce, but Shirley and Lisa have to go catch a train. We were scheduled to finish at 8, and we had better let them get back to their hometown. So I wonder if you might just join me in thanking them enormously as they leave. So the rest of you don't get to escape quite so easily, and we've got, we're going to go on for about another 7 minutes. So if you all stick to the 1 minute, we can get about 6 or 7 further comments. So let's do one here and one further back, and then I'm going to come over there. So yes, please, just right at the front here.
Thank you very much. Keeping it very brief, my first degree was at Oxford University, and in response to the question, why isn't my professor black, mine weren't, obviously, you always say that. In my first week, Freshers Week, I was told by another student who'd studied this in books at his school, his expensive private school, that I couldn't call myself black because it was offensive to dark people. And given I went to Oxford, and those are people who will become the movers and shakers in society, predominantly, I think that's really worrying, and that's one of the problems we're up against. Thank you.
And then, by the way, they run the country too. But anyway, there's one at the back there in the middle. Yes, you got your hand up. Specs. We'll get a microphone to you. And then I saw a gentleman here in a red sweater. We'll come to you. And then I'm going to go right, because they've been deprived over there.
Okay, so Kat Gupta, sometimes teaching in Nottingham, sometimes in Queen Mary's. I'm one of the precariously employed. So it's a shame that Dr. Shirley Tate has gone, because one of the things I was thinking about is actually where these universities are situated. So I'm teaching in Nottingham, and the students I teach are predominantly private school, educated, white, very, very middle class. When I teach in Queen Mary's, it's slightly better, but it's still teaching in communities where university is not a kind of expectation necessarily, and the feeling that you're colonialising those areas and the discomfort of that. And then I was also thinking about how do we actually support these students. When I was teaching in Nottingham, for some reason, all of the kind of non-white and LGBTQ students seem to end up in my groups. And that seemed to be a deliberate choice on their part, but it then left me worrying about how do I support these students? How do I prepare them for the kind of discomfort and exclusion and potential abuse that they're going to encounter within this system? Just how do I do that?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to come to the gentleman in the red sweater in 3 rows down here, and then I know I've been ignoring you, so we'll come over there and finish off over there. Please.
Hi, my name is Prince Saprai. I'm a lecturer here in the law department, and I am a member of the Race Equality group. Well done, Nathaniel. This is a fantastic event. I just wanted to share something, really. I've worked as a lecturer in 3 Russell Group universities. I started teaching when I was 22. I've been teaching for about 12 years now at Oxford, at Warwick, and now at UCL for 5 years. I have attended hundreds of faculty meetings. I don't ever recall a single faculty meeting that I've attended where the issue of race has been raised or discussed in relation to staff recruitment at all. I find this shocking, it's depressing, and I just wanted to echo, especially given the amount of underrepresentation there is in higher education, and I just want to echo what the gentleman said over there, that it's extremely difficult to actually raise this issue. It places a huge burden on BME staff who feel that they should be raising this issue, but it's very difficult to, and we really need leadership. And I hope, Provost, that you can provide leadership here at UCL at least, so that this is a topic that can actually be discussed at faculty level, because on the ground it's not being discussed, it's ignored, and it's brushed under the carpet.
Okay, we're going to come across to the right-hand group.
Sorry, can I take this woman? She's had her hand up for the whole meeting.
Please do.
Thank you. Thank you, all panellists, and the contribution of colour is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. My contribution that I would like to make was for those people that are here that are Caucasian professors, what will they be feeding back? Will they be feeding back the uncomfortability, the shifting in chairs, the taking up of the iPad, the tapping of the fingers, the colour in faces that turn from white to pink, okay? An observation. Also, maybe in order for some people to understand, if you take yourself on holiday as a white person in an all-black country, and everybody is black, and there's just you, how does that feel? That's about as near as I can get to it. But it would be interesting to find out what white people felt on listening to the particular issue, and what can they do if they want to do to make changes within the academia. Thank you.
Some down the front here. Let's stay in this group because we've been over there a long time. That's all.
Thank you. Thanks, panel. I was precariously employed at the London Metropolitan University, where they shut down the Caribbean Studies Centre, and my whole world went, why? How did that happen? Because it was that centre that carried me through from working class, undergraduate, master's and PhD level to actually teaching at the university. So that was shut down, because what I noticed throughout was this change from being interested in Caribbean or African peoples, studying them, in other words, doing black studies, to then being more interested in subjects that are about the Middle East. That's the new, interesting, saucy, post-colonial, whatever subject. So you're a moment in time when you're of interest, and thereafter it's, well, you need to be sidelined. We don't need to understand those peoples anymore. One of the quickest thing I wanted to say was about the need for a kind of a through line from the secondary schooling or primary schooling, where students of working class background are being given choices of subjects that are like B.Tech hospitality. That's a GCSE subject, and that's what they're gearing into. So it starts from that position. Work with the universities and the secondary schooling needs to work together so that you get the confidence built in those young people about where they're going in terms of their academia.
Okay. The lady in green has been incredibly patient, and we're going to go to the lady in pink next to her, and then I'm afraid we're going to finish. This could go on all night, and it can go on a lot longer, but I think we need a glass of wine to hand as well. And so we're just going to finish with these two contributions now.
Thank you. It's clearly a very necessary opportunity for this outpouring, and congratulations to the people who've taken the time and effort to do it. I am wondering on a couple of fronts, really. One is, could we expect to see anything happening at UCL as a result of this? I'm thinking in particular about research into areas of mental health and what happens with Black people in academia and in other walks of life for that matter, because the mental health institutions are really very overrepresented, and the experiences that Black people have in institutions, it leads to all kinds of situations where that can happen. And I'm just wondering if there'll be any action taken as a result of this, or if it's just another opportunity for an outpouring where there's a very marked absence of white males, and till the next outpouring.
I may just say a word or two about that in summing up. Okay, so I was deliberately asked we were trying not to answer questions, but I've got Provost's privilege to say a few things at the end.
Oh, that's not fair.
It's not fair. Okay, we'll go straight for a glass of wine then. Please.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Aduni Adams. I'm from the Rita Group. First of all, I'd like to thank Nathaniel and the other members of the panel for the truth that has been spoken this evening, the absolute truth. And I echo someone else's sentiment that this should have been a day long, a week long. We need these spaces and we need to fight for these spaces. So I say to the Provost that we need to have more of these events. We need to know that this conversation can be ongoing and happening and changing things, because if it's just a one moment in time, it'll be forgotten tomorrow. We need to have this. The other thing, a shameless plug from the Rita Group, we recently did an event that Nathaniel very kindly sat on the panel on this weekend called Skin Tone, Colorism and Passing. We're having another event at the University of Sunderland on Friday the 9th of May, and it's called The Impact of Race on Music. Please do come along, please do register, please come and take part. I think you'll be very surprised by some of the things that we have going on there. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are unfortunately going to draw this to a close. We've already gone on for about 15 minutes later than we were originally scheduled. A few people threw a few questions, and I guess all I want to say is that the very fact that we're here, the very fact that we're having this discussion, the very fact we've been writing about this does mean that we are taking it seriously. We are listening to you. You don't have to convince me about what you've been through. I'm more than convinced. To me, the key issue is what do we actually do about it? What are the practical things that need to happen that makes this situation change? And that's where I personally hope to shift the discourse to within UCL. And we'll see how we get on. It's crucially important. Thoroughly enjoyable evening. I have learnt a very great deal from what's been said tonight, from you, the audience, as well as from the panel. I'm simply going to close by thanking all of the speakers tonight. They were wonderful contributions. They were very heartfelt. They were very honest, and at times people I thought were quite brave with their own emotions in what they said. And that was very impressive and very touching. And I'd also like to thank you, the audience, for some wonderful contributions at the end. When I heard about the format, I thought, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And surely we need to have the panel answering questions. But actually, I think it worked brilliantly just to listen to you. And I have to tell you that that was Nathaniel's idea, or at least I think it was. And it worked brilliantly, Nathaniel, so very well done. I'm going to close by informing you that there are some refreshments, and they are in the North Cloisters. So for those of you not from UCL, be careful on Gower Street, because it's lethal trying to cross that road. I've nearly been killed 3 times in 6 months. Just managed to avoid buses. So cross the road carefully, straight across the quad, and it's on the left-hand end, and straight through the door, and you're in the North Cloisters. And there's loads of milling around space, and I think there's some wine and some nibbles or something like that. And I'll see you over there. Thank you.